Hey everyone, I'm Clive.
Hey, Louis here.
This is Akush.
We welcome you back. We will be looking at automatic model checking, change management, and project handover, and a bunch of other stuff, because nothing says fun like Kobe spreadsheets, apparently. We looked at some of the hard truths about CDEs and how you set them up to get yours right in the first place. We will be turning our sights on how you verify model data automatically and autonomously, how you manage change, and how you nail that project handover. Louis and I have tried to manage this in many ways and tried to manage deliverables and teams and information requirements and LODs and level of information need and document requirements and trackers and all this in lots of different spreadsheets and tools. And when we did, it started with a huge amount of optimism, and we connected a bunch of different tools together, 5-10 different tools with formulas and duct tape, but it was pretty painful. It worked until it didn't work. Is that right?
I mean, it got the information out, but then different versions of it for different projects, the formatting and the exporting and the sharing, and whether people were seeing the latest, it was just very complex. And that's where the wheels fell off, right? The structure was there, but then it was all the other pieces, the administration. And yeah, there was a realization in the room. And I think, Clive, you said, maybe we need a nap for this.
Yeah, unfortunately, spreadsheets weren't built for digital delivery. And we kind of realized this, this poor little guy, he's having some yummy spreadsheet spaghetti. But then at some point, you get to the realization that maybe he realized that his project was being tracked in Excel, and teams don't really have a proper interface, and you don't have a link directly to the contractual obligations. There's not really clear workflow to hand over. So it becomes a challenge. And we find ourselves in this situation where we want to build something really brilliant, amazing, but we're often left with poor instructions and half of the education or the understanding, and not really people agreeing on what needs to be built. And when you define requirements loosely in a document or dump them in a spreadsheet, or not really truly collaborated and got to an agreement and an understanding, it can be a big challenge. We saw so many challenges, and here's a list of pretty much everything that's guaranteed to ruin your Friday afternoon, from model checking to issue ping pong to progress reports about progress reports and questions about whether we've actually got something that we need and whether we need it or not. And we talked about the amount of wasted data that's created is just crazy. We end up having Kobe nightmares. And, the classic that happens at the end of the project is really, what did we learn? It's not really what closeout on a project should feel like. It shouldn't feel stressful. It should feel part of the workflow. And if we're using manual, error-prone, or incomplete or unusable information, that's pretty much what we experience. Everyone has questions like, which version is it? And I'm not sure really what these guys are doing, but maybe it's like a sacred ritual of taping files to a tree and hoping that things are going to work out. You've probably followed along with some of these things, and you've probably felt like this. Yeah, this is not really digital delivery. We're really rebranding this as digital despair. And professionals as we are, it would be probably a good thing to stop pretending that this is a scalable workflow for our projects and to see how we can change things. So how do we change things? It doesn't have to be as we've just described. What if we could connect everything together, from the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and make sure that it's in one structured and centralized and contract linked system? No extra spreadsheets, no angry emails, no passive aggressively written file names, underscores or spaces or hyphens. And if we looked at this in 3 steps, this is the plan we're going to go through today. The first one is, how do you start with clear requirements and deliverables, both human and also machine readable? And how do you have them integrated into the workflow? So it's not a disparate spreadsheet, but it's actually connected. The second one is sharing how this process, this workflow, is automated and also autonomous. It's not unproductive by creating a bunch of reports and issues. It's about actually providing the connected workflow that allows the teams to use the data to create the deliverables and automatically check them. And then as you go through the delivery, really want to be able to learn as you go. And so what we want to be able to do is capture what worked and ditch what didn't work, and then stop repeating the same mistakes. So having an integrated delivery with a Kobe handover and being able to do all of these things so that you get to, without having to add additional work, auto versioning and commenting and activities, and a little trick that we'll call unscoped tasks that we'll share with you today, and understand the power of the golden thread of this information and how you can use it to learn and have that integrated lessons learned workflow. Okay, so today we'll talk about that contracted and connected system and how we automate the validation and how we replace all of those manual checks, including Kobe and handover and lessons learned and closeout. In order to do that, we've got 3 demos for you. Let's cut the slides, enough talking, and let's get into sharing how simple this can be. So the first one is a workflow that connects everything together. This connected system versus a disconnected system of PDFs and Excel and email and a whole bunch of challenges that we saw before. I'm going to jump into Plannerly. So we've seen this before. We looked at how we use our templates to get started, and then we started to create our projects. And inside of our project, if I go into our project here, you can see we started to create teams and have team members on our projects. We created all of the resources and understood what they were and whether we needed to assign people for their accountability and start to have different team access. And then we looked at the scoping and we created a scope of requirements. And if I unroll all of this, we can see everything from our responsibility matrices of tasks that maybe are modeling tasks, all the way through to our master information delivery plan for all of these different aspects. And then inside of each one of these, we also have a bunch of other content. And if I turn on the documents as a piece of content inside of the 3D model deliverable for 3D coordination, we required the architecture team to deliver us a model for a Revit file and an IFC file. And you can see that the blue one in here has been delivered, and I can open it, click it, understand it, zoom through it, interrogate it, see the objects, see the properties, etc. But we're going to show you a much more integrated way of going through this and reviewing it as well. So that's a bit of a recap on what we've done, but let's look at how, when the fun starts, we're actually really wanting to track and manage and control this. So we've got a master information delivery plan and we've got a responsibility matrix, and we started to define some work packages in some of the previous demos. And if I want to see a lot more closely about one specific set of deliverables, I can start filtering down to that. Maybe in this example, because we're talking about a handover, we want to review what the asset requirements are and whether teams met those or not. So I could start to create filters and to say, I actually want to just see the asset information model as a set of requirements. And you can see it filtering in the background. And then I'm also going to just start to see, I don't want all folders. I only want to see maybe the architectural folder in this case. And I can also start to filter on some of these statuses. And maybe I just at this point want to see the approved, the completed, and the verified statuses. So I could start to filter this down and create a smaller set of requirements, smaller work package, and then start even defining this as a piece of scope, creating a work package from this. It's got all the filters in here, and I'm going to call this the asset information model as a work package. This is now created as a filter, and this filter is going to be available to me throughout the whole of the project.
Yeah, this is super cool because we've got this large database all in one place. And with Clive creating this work package, I can jump in, select that work package, and see exactly what he sees. So communication is not lost. We're on the same page. And if I eventually wanted to export all this out, there's no formatting involved, no time wasted there. So yeah, super cool.
And if I move from scope to the verification and compliance step, you'll see that this also carries across. So this set of tasks that's filtered now. So if I come into verify, I see that this filter is brought across and the asset information model and the permissions and everything else is shown inside of the verify module as well. Let's assign some work. So the principle is that in the Kanban board, it's a beautiful thing to see these columns, but maybe we want to group the data in a different way. And a nice way is grouping it by team member. And then we can see all of the tasks that have not been assigned to team members. And then I can start to distribute the workload by dragging these around and saying that certain people have certain tasks, and you can see the assignment is happening pretty quickly, and it will instantly be available to that team member so they know that is their task. So I'm just dragging these around. Obviously, you would think more about this, but being able to assign them is pretty easy.
Yeah, and what is super cool about it is that what we are looking at is actually the contract. But because everything is fully integrated, each and every member of the project or teams can look at it from their own perspectives and really update the tasks and see what they have to work with. So just making a certain view of the same set of data really allows teams to progress together and update the management as needed.
Very cool. So now if we wanted to start to look at reviewing tasks that had been completed in a model, let's say, then maybe we would filter just for the completed and the verified. So I'm going to remove the approved column so I can see only the tasks that I really should be reviewing and ones that have been verified. And as I've done this, maybe you guys could make some updates to this and start to tell me what you're working on. There we go. I can see now Akos or Louis is moving each of them are moving these tasks, so I can start to review and see which ones are completed. And this whole principle is that basically it means that I don't have to keep on asking what's done. And all I need to then do is review the work that has been completed or suggested that it's been completed.
This is super cool because consultants can update their own tasks in real time. And Clive doesn't have to follow up with myself or Akash or all the other consultants involved to find out what they're doing. So in essence, my to-do list is on here. Akash's to-do list is on here. And we're updating our own tasks all while the progress updates are updating themselves. So in Clive, I don't know what your job is to do here if these tasks are managing themselves now.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to go to the golf course.
Oh, man.
So, well, we do need to have a verification. And this is the part where it's interesting because you might have people saying that this is completed, but how do I know that this is truly completed? And that's where it gets really interested in how can we automate this workflow? Because we've asked for specific properties and we want to know whether they've actually done these things. So for the parking entrance barriers, I can say, and this actually can be something that your consultants would do, but I can connect into a model. Last time we saw when we connected into Autodesk Construction Cloud and how the versions automatically synchronize once you connect to a model. You can also just drag and drop a model into here, and that can be one of about 70 different file formats, including Revit and IFC, 3D WG files, SketchUp files, and a whole bunch more. So these are all just simply just dragged and dropped. Or if we've got files that are in File Manager already or have been delivered as part of the delivery process, I can then simply search for them and I can see them in here and I could pick them in here and I can actually see I've already picked this one over here. So I can say, let's go over here and see that model, and the versions are automatically updated for us as well. We can switch between the Kanban board and the model view, and we can start to interrogate this. And that's great. I mean, pretty cool to have them in the same place.
It is pretty cool. So one thing that you showed is it doesn't really matter where your model comes from. So depending on your workflows, you can have full flexibility. And if you want to link into a CD, so just reference the models from a CD, or you want to upload directly into this interface, that's something that you can do, or use the file manager, our clever data environment, to collect all these files and then start investigating them in the verify module.
Cool. And then we want to actually start reviewing whether these tasks have been completed per our requirements. And so we need some way to connect what has been requested with what has been delivered. And there are a number of different ways to do this and make this super automated. On this parking entrance barrier, if I was to click this link to model elements button, then I can create rules in here. And those rules could be really detailed using an or and not and a whole bunch of other things. I'm going to say that the property, and these properties are all coming from the model. I'm going to say that the name is actually the same name as our task here. So I'm just simply going to say parking entrance barriers is what we're wanting to link. And then when I hit save, it's simply going to find everything with parking entrance barrier, link it up, and also automatically check to see whether it meets the requirements that we've set. and it's evaluating that it's 100% because all of the information requirements are present and they also are complete and correct based on the rules that we've set up in the workflow. So it's a pretty easy task for me to just click on here, and then my only activity in this checklist to say, verify the information requirements. I'm going to do that. And then now I'm going to change this task to be verified. And it removes it from our view, goes into the verified column.
It is super cool, isn't it? So instead of just having to look element by element, so the typical setup of a BIM manager today to have two huge screens and browsing through an Excel sheet on one and trying to compare it to a model on another screen, that's something that is being automated now. And we've seen just pieces of it, but it can be pretty nice rules that we set up. We can target precisely, assuming, for example, that you are looking for certain elements on a certain floor made of gypsum for comparing your model database against your requirements database based on that single rule that you created, and then the results. Hopefully greens, as we see now, but in a real life project, you might see some other colors as well.
Yep. So we connected that task, if we look at it here, with a link that basically is on a task level. But what if we wanted to do that across all tasks? Well, for this model, we can do that simply, and I can just say, by linking any part of the task data, so it could be the code, maybe you want to link the code to an assembly code, maybe you want to link the name to something, maybe the entity type or the subtitle or anything in that model, and you want to link it to a specific property, and maybe you want to link it, this is a Revit model I can see, so maybe I want to link it to the type name or something like that. In this example, I'm going to pick this name property, because we have structured the properties in that way. It's going to create rules for every one of these tasks, and it's going to check all of the tasks, and it's going to evaluate them. And now we've got the percentages to say how well we've done, and we can see whether we have achieved what we needed to achieve or not. And this one's not good. Louis said that this task is completed, but it's only showing us 50% complete because we are missing some of these. The point of contact is missing entirely, and the manufacturer is also not completed correctly in the way that it's being asked for. It's actually a property that's there, but it's not completed. So as we go through this workflow, we really want to automate as much as possible. And having a rule at this model level, or a set of rules that are linking automatically based on these properties and based on the values that are found inside of the model, we can make it really easy to just link them up. And then I go through as a manager, clicking on these, reviewing them one by one, and finding out whether they're actually meeting the requirements or not.
On top of that, what is even better is that you can save it as a template. So whatever you are creating here as linking rules, that can be, we will see it in the last demo today, but that can be then reverted back to your template. So in a perfect world, when you start out from that template and the modeling follows your requirements, and you upload the models, pretty much magic happens because everything automatically is going to be lined up, linked together. So again, the model is being checked against the requirements automatically.
Yeah, also the model rules, it's for those teams who are using unit format, master format, uniclass, all these classifications. If your scope lines up with those codes, that's the connection between your scope and the elements. And with one rule, you can connect all of them.
You could even add a combination of these as well. So we've got a model rule, but we could also add task rules as well. As you click on these, you're seeing the geometry that's linked. You can see the review. I'm not going to check this one that says verify information requirements, but the review of geometry, well, I know I can see here that I'm looking for detailed elements. I have some kind of geometric representation as an image. I could see maybe there's more of a description. I can open this card. Maybe there's a description of what I need, and maybe there's even more detail in this card. In this example, we don't have too much, but now how do I review this geometry? Well, sometimes it's not even as easy as this, where you can see them outside of a building. The geometry might be hidden inside of a building on a certain floor. And what would happen if I could just simply group these elements so that I could review the geometry? So there's an option here to be able to grab the geometry and group it all together and be able to see, am I actually getting the geometry that I'm looking for in a really clear and easy way? So now I can say, yep, I've reviewed the geometry. I'm going to cheat on this one, and we'll show you a one down the bottom that's actually not completed as well. I'm just going to verify this one. Okay, great. Let's move on to another one.
The cluster tool is super cool because you're not navigating through the model to hunt down elements. And the grouping, you can also, there you go. I was going to say, can you group not just one, but you can group the entire building separately and do your checks much more efficiently. The geometry checks, these are your LOD checks, your geometry checks. So it's much more efficient way to go through this part of that workflow.
Yep. So let's look at the elevator doors quickly and see these ones. We had some checks in here. Let me just move that one to the top. The first one is verify the information requirements. Looks great. We're all green. It's 100%. So I'm good with that. Check the attached documents. So we've got some attachments in here. Elevator door O&M. Okay, this looks like the elevator door operations, maintenance, documentation. Great. Elevator permit application was a requirement. We can see that. Perfect. So I've checked the attached documents, check alignment with the architecture model. I can see that these are in place here, but maybe I want to actually see them from a specific angle. And in this case, I might want to also turn on other parts of this model. Maybe I would like to turn on the floors as well. I want to show these as well. And then I can start to see, well, these elevator doors are correct in the right place. Maybe this one's not in the right place. And I can say, well, hey, this needs a fix. This needs somebody to take a look at it. And
you keep finding all my flaws here. So not only are you finding all the information requirements that I didn't do, but you're also finding my model flaws. So right there's an offset on that elevator door that we could catch. So just catching not only your documents, the information requirements, and now even model discrepancies, it's now hosting all of these issues in one place.
Yeah, a lot of time we're creating reports of issues. Instead of having to do that, we actually have the list of what we need. And this only becomes an issue when it's not completed. So we don't actually have to go through a process of creating new issues. We already have this card that represents our requirements. And now I can start to have a workflow that says, how do we capture the fixes that are required? I'm going to manage the different statuses that we have. I'm going to add a new status and call it fixes. And I'm going to make that red. And I'm even going to say that it goes before anything that said is completed, and I'm going to transfer it back into the fixes. Open this. I can see who's responsible for it. Louis is responsible for it. You can add a comment. He's going to get an email about it. He'll get a link directly to this card as well. We can have a conversation on it. It has the full history. So you don't have to think about writing, I need you to check this, because it's not checked. So it means that it's obvious. These are the things that he needs to do in order to make this card 100%. I'm going to then switch that back to the fixes column. It jumps out of my view. I can get on with the next task. I can see the next task is interior walls. We've got two things that we need to check. Compliance with fire safety regulations. There's an information requirement saying that the property must be one of these values. And I can see that actually all of the 81 walls have got this complete and correct. And then we want to see that whether they're load bearing or not, and then check wall materials meets the project standards. So we've got here, value must be one of these comma separated values for the materials, but we can see that there are 4 of these that do not meet that requirement. We can see exactly which 4 they are, and then either have threaded conversation, or I can just kick that back to fixes. And even though it said that it was 98% complete, how finding these 4 of them versus the 77, how difficult that would be if these were on disparate, one was on a spreadsheet and one was in some kind of model viewer. This is really about how we can really keep this connected and integrated. So I'm going to switch this back to the fixes column as well. And then we've got some site signage. So we can see some of them have got the right requirements and some of them don't, manufacturer, etc. And I'm going to also say this requires fixing. That's how simple that workflow is, to be able to not just have the requirements present, but also connect them up to the model elements and automate that process and really understand what the status is with respect to the contracted requirements.
A couple of super cool things here is that on one hand, issue tracking is a beautiful thing. So that has to happen, but we might manage to show how much we can reduce the amount of issue tracking. Firsthand, we don't have to create issues because everything is a set of requirements communicated on a task card. So if something goes wrong, something doesn't meet those requirements, we just have to add to that threaded conversation, change the status, and it is going to be taken care of. But even before that, so Clive now was showing a party who is on the receiving end, but because it's automated and autonomous, even the sending ends can do this checking automatically on their end. So you wouldn't even see any kind of problems, and you wouldn't even have to start this issue tracking process because they can fix the issues before sending the model for your review.
Yep, absolutely. And as we track this, it's very cool because each card has this activity tracking as well. So you can see exactly who's done what at what point in time. It shows the golden thread of who the team is, who the team member is, who said it was ready, who approved it. So it doesn't mean you have to do this as a separate activity. The other part to this workflow is that we can get some summaries of what's going on in the model as well. So we can start to see, what is approved and color code this model that represents now. Here we've got the model colored based on the asset information model milestone, and we can see what's approved, what's in the fixes, and we can start to isolate that and say, oh, this is 3.3% of this model is ready to be fixed. This is the only stuff that's verified. This is the stuff that's approved. And we can also start to see what's unlinked. So the content that is actually not already connected to the model. If I was to then start, I know that an example of that is a sync inside of here. I know that with some model elements, but they are not part of our scope at the moment. And as I show unlinked items, I can then start to say, well, I know I need to maybe think about that in the future. And so I'm going to create a new task, and I'm going to call this bathroom sinks. I could use the Building Smart Data Dictionary to make it specific. I'm going to create an image for this using AI. Maybe at this point in time, we would like to have detailed elements that are actually coordinated. And I would like to create a description. And maybe I would also like to have a checklist to see what the conditions of satisfaction are. So now we're creating a checklist of these requirements. Everything is tracked about who's doing this. I can now see this is my bathroom sink image that's being created. And I could refine this, work with this, start to create placeholders for the documents that are required. Maybe I know I need to have the warranty document and it's a PDF. And I know that I'm going to assign this. Maybe the contractor is going to add this. So I can start to create these placeholders for all of these information requirements that I need.
Yeah, this is awesome. Whether it's something that I missed on my end or something that Clive wants to capture and update in his template or in future projects, this task doesn't just include itself in the scope or in the contract. It actually puts itself in a separate area on the grid, what you'd find as unscoped tasks. And we'll walk through that workflow in a minute. But what really this is doing is just giving you that method of a lessons learned opportunity in the future.
Yep. And I'm going to add maybe a couple of requirements for the warranty contact and the is extended warranty. So I've got two properties that I'm requiring. And now it's saying that I don't have these properties as well. So the principle is that you start creating these. And as Louis said, it's unplanned work. It's stuff that we'll capture later. One of the cool things about having all of the requirements in the same place as the models, if I was to go to a full screen and see this 3D model, I could do a bunch of other things like take a cross-section through this. So I can add a cross-section, move this, and just basically take a cross-section at any point in the model and start seeing this. I can walk around the model. So let me take the cross-section off. Let me go to first person, and I can then start to just basically walk in, around, and use the keyboard to be able to navigate around like I'm in a video game. It understands that I'm also going to climb up the stairs, and I can also interrogate these objects, click on them, find the properties, understand each one of these objects, and whether, for example, here we've got the warranty details that we've asked for. Very intuitive, walking around, being able to see and find the stuff that you need. We can also interrogate the model by maybe measuring certain things. I can pick and measure in metric, in imperial, etc., be able to understand this and click on this and define exactly whether it's a measurement or an angle.
Yep. Teams are really appreciating this because in many cases, so you could do something similar, of course, in an authoring tool, but not everyone on the team has access to those authoring tools. So having the common understanding by reviewing the model together and doing these checks in it has a huge value.
Cool. So let's say that we have finished all of the things, they're all completed, and we're ready to rock and roll with this as an asset information model, let's say. And we can simply control the access to this based on the status of the model as well. If something's still in progress, it's potentially not. We should have probably shared this so that it was visible so that people could actually use it. But I'm now going to publish this and it becomes authorized for use. It is connected to the permissions. So permission-based access is now available to this model as well, depending on how people want to control those permissions. And we looked at that back in here in the dashboard. And based on each of your permissions, you can control who has access to what.
Yeah, the statusing of the model helps everyone understand which version is the right one for use. So in this case, for the asset information model, we know version 2 is the version we should be using for that and not any of the previous versions. I always like to use the 3D coordination model as an example, because if it doesn't have those structural components or those mechanical ducting, I'm not going to use that model for coordination purposes if we don't have all those elements yet. This status is that gate check before you go use that model elsewhere.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so we have seen how you create human and machine readable content. We showed you how you would use that to create some of the model content and how you would use that in an add-on for Revit, or how you'd use that inside of ArchiCAD or Solibri and a whole bunch of other tools. And we've talked about so far the quality checking and how you can automate that as much as possible and status the tasks and really connect that process through. The second demo is all about what you do with that data and how you manage and use that data. Let's take a look at a second set of demos, how we can export that data. We've created a bunch of content inside of our project requirements, and we could see based on this set of filters and based on all these requirements. So I'm going to clear these requirements. I'm just going to show everything in here. So we've got all of this content. If I wanted to use that, I could create an information delivery specification. Here I'm going to File Manager. It's where all of those files that are either created in the system or set as a placeholder, or they are linked to another system, or added as a requirement, or they are in another CDE, whether they are created inside of here. They're all collated here, and you can manage these, and they'll automatically filter into these folders as we saw last week. If I wanted to then create another set of outputs or requirements, one of the things that we could do is create a document. And we saw last time, maybe we would have an asset information model as a report. And if we created that report, maybe it looks a bit like this. So we could see how we can get now a review of what's done, what's not done, and making all of this in one place in a really seamless and clear way to get this exported and to get this created and shared between a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, this gives us a huge opportunity. We have this huge database with content, and what we could do in seconds, export what we need. And in this case, we exported a work package that has a total list of documents that have been added or are still missing. The checklists, giving us a percentage of the amount of checklists in this package that are complete, the information requirements. And then if we want to dig into that, you can scroll down a little bit there, see exactly what tasks are completed and which aren't. And then go to that team member, go to that team if you needed to. So this can be extracted by the consultants themselves, or maybe this is where Clive has to, jump off the back nine at the golf course and start picking up the phone to get on some of our cases here.
Hopefully that's automated. So as we create these, you can also version them. So we saw like how we would create these and then how we would version each one of these as being the contract. So as we had contract in here, we set one up and it was now sending somebody on a Monday morning or sending a few people this report. So imagine that you've then set this up to automatically send to everyone, even when you're on the golf course. So once you've got all these files in here, that's great. We talked about PDFs and a lot about structured data, but how could you use that structured data? We've talked about how you can export an information delivery specification, which is in a machine readable format. But our industry uses Excel a great deal. So let's look at how we would create an output of a scope. Maybe so we don't need model element IDs, and I'm just going to hit create. So basically here, it's going to export based on those filters, based on that set of requirements, a set of Excel export. And a lot of teams are using this for a variety of different purposes. Akash, what are you seeing? How are you seeing people use these?
Yeah, well, there are very many use cases. So what is super cool about it is that we not only have a database, a very rich database with a beautiful user interface, but actually all that raw data is available in an Excel export. So different use cases vary from data visualization using different tools, Tableau, Power BI, or even authoring, like we showed last time how it can go into Revit as well. So that's just a couple of ways of using this data. But of course, we also showed IDS last time, the information delivery specification, as another vehicle to get this data out. Lots of different use cases there.
Very cool. Yep. Lots of data, lots of different use cases. Using that Excel data is really super cool. And then we talked about, actually, let me jump quickly back into the scope. We talked about how defining information requirements and creating an asset information model, and whether we were checking and verifying these elements, and mainly about the information requirements. So is the manufacturer, is the point of contact, all of these things, are they added? And one of the things that is really cool about this is that we can define these as COBie requirements. We can also add a tag to these. And if the property value is present in the model, and it is something that then gets verified, all of those property values can then be exported in a formatted report as a COBie export. So let's create one of those quickly as a handover report. And if I simply just say, I want to create this handover report, I'm going to use the data from this model that we had, and I'm going to pick the asset information model as the milestone that I want to export this data. And then I can report it for all folders. Let me just hit create, and we'll see a handover report. So what this is doing is it's taking the defined requirements from our scope and saying, these are what we're asking for. It's pulling the data from the elements in the 3D model for the values that we've requested, and it's placing it in a formatted spreadsheet so that we can have that data in a format that can then be imported into an FM system, a CAFM, computer facility management system. And that's really the process. So now I've filled that gap to now open this. So now we can see things like the assets and the bathroom sinks that I added, for example. Maybe, so what was the other one? We saw components. Some of this stuff is filled in because we've got the information. Some of it is not because it's not there. But this is the process that we would go through. And everything is built in. So we've got the details for the people working on the project, and everything's automated in that workflow.
Super cool. Whoever tried putting together a COBie spreadsheet would know that this automation is a huge help. But actually, this is kind of just the end game, because it is all going through the entire process of first requesting the right COBie parameters. So not just saying that I need COBie, but what is exactly that the project requires. Then going through the quality checking loop and the autonomous quality checking, and then the approvals. And after that, we will have a beautiful COBie spreadsheet to use later down the road.
Yep. And I was just classifying some of this stuff. So when it appears, it will appear in the reports as well. So everything is automatically being filtered into the right places, having permission-based access. If we wanted to as well, we could even have an approval and a signature on anything in here, even if it's a spreadsheet. All right, we're nearly there. The last demo we wanted to share with you was really completing that loop and saying, once we've worked on a project, it would be super cool if we actually could learn from it as well. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is have understanding of who requested tasks right the way through to who tested it and who approved it. And so we've seen some of that inside of each of these tasks. And if I open one of these, you can see the history of what's happening. Where was one that's in fixes? So I can see something here in fixes. Actually, which one was it? This one that I added a comment to. Everything is documented, detailed, tracked. So we've got all of this information. And maybe we would want to export some of that content as well to try and learn from it. So let's create a quick report for a document that I want to add. So for the asset information model, I want to change the settings for this report. So I actually want in here to include the comments. and maybe the task activities as well. And when I include these, you'll see at the bottom here, they're included at the bottom. So if I save these settings and I hit create, it will then create me another version of this, and that will have all of those settings in. What's great about this is that I haven't had to do anything. It's versioned it automatically. It's said who's got access. It's even created a uniform title based on the project requirements as well. And if I look through this, I can see all of the history of every single task, what we've done, comments and everything. So you've got this threaded information, golden thread of information, right the way through documents and comments and activities and everything that you've created. So you've got the history.
It's super cool. Everything is just captured. So this is a complete audit trail of the testing activities, as you mentioned, who requested it, who tested it, who delivered it, and so on. So making it very easy to verify the results and share accountability. This is what we can also call the golden thread of decision making and all those.
Super cool. Okay. And then as you are making refinements on your project, you actually will be making updates to some of the documentation as well. If we have a project and we start to review what's happened on that project, and the security requirements are something that's important to us, obviously, to update project by project as things change. And as we review at the end of a project, maybe just looking at some of the version history that's automatically tracked for us, we can see exactly what has happened and what's basically changed since we started. And here I can see that we've added 2 extra line items compared to the template that we had imported from. If we don't capture this on a project, it's lost, and it means that all future projects will not learn from this. So one of the parts of that closeout process is to review what's changed. We then can go back to our company template, and if I go into the template and I find that same section for the security requirements, and then I can understand, well, okay, this has not been included. I need to include these 2 additional pieces of the puzzle, and obviously that's then also tracked in here. But because this has now changed, if I go back to my account home and maybe jump into another project, and this project somebody else is working on, I go to this docs, hopefully you're following this so far, what I should then see is a little blue dot that says, hey, somebody's changed something on a template that you have previously used. And if I go to see the versions and that there's a new source template update available, I can then see that the history, the change based on what I have added, and then I can choose to accept or reject that. I can incorporate that and overwrite our project data if I wanted to. All of that workflow is up to me whether I would then go and change it or not. But it's a controlled workflow that completely understands whether we want to make these updates or not.
Super cool. Yeah, so it's a bi-directional kind of update. If there are changes in a project, capturing the lessons learned is going to be pretty straightforward for your templates team. But as we are making updates to the templates, notifying the actual projects, ongoing projects about these changes is really making sure that everyone is using the latest and greatest templates. So not only just creating documents for the desk, but actually those documents are also going to be used and applied and updated in the projects as well.
Yeah, in that example, what I wanted to add was, Clive made an update and Akash saw that update and was able to make that choice whether he wanted to implement that. That template workflow, we usually meet up every 3 months, 6 months to make a decision on that. But we could have thrown a comment in the templates, agreed on it there, just like we did on the project requirements, and made that update live, and it gets implemented on ongoing projects. So I guess the one thing I wanted to highlight is there's no more bottleneck of having to wait for a template update meeting in 4 months, and then all these other ongoing projects don't get those benefits. We don't have to wait for that. We could do that more fluidly.
Super cool. So that's showing a continuous learning loop between projects that are created, and as you're going through a project and updating templates in the docs. It also happens between the scope and verify as well. And one of the things that's really cool to see in here is that, yes, we create content in the expectation that it's going to be used. But also, what about if, as you go through a project, you find things that you have missed? And one of those examples was we turn on unscoped tasks, which are basically tasks that originated outside of the scoping, the original scoping. We can then see we had bathroom sinks. Oh, you can see one. Here's one that we created earlier. So basically, the bathroom sinks is a task that was not part of the original scope. And this is something that we can either drag and drop and include into our project, or we can then use it from our content in our existing templates. And the principle behind this is that if you have something in here and you want to use it, you can also choose to say whether you want to bring in everything that's included in it. You might have set up dependencies, you might have set up checklists, information requirements, assigned a team, costs, geometry, everything. It had document requirements. All of those pieces of the puzzle, it will then retain and bring in on your next project as well.
Yeah, this scope creep essentially is hidden in Excel or other platforms. And here it's highlighted for you to make a decision and bring that into your template or not. So it really just, prevents you making the same mistake on the next project.
Very cool. And then what happens at the end of a project, a lot of the time people run away and maybe they're on another project and you can't even get them to review and refine and to learn from it. So we've got some built-in workflows that we shared to learn from it. But at the very end, you're going to want to archive a project and basically say, I want to put it in stasis. I want to protect it. I want to make sure it's secure. And I want to make sure that things aren't changed unnecessarily by team members as well. So there's an archiving step at the end of that as well.
So super cool. You can save these projects for later. And actually, if needed, you can even reinstate them and you can look into them and maybe grab some of those pieces, scope items, whatsoever as a template. But definitely you can save them for long term.
You've seen what's broken, hopefully some of the how to fix it as well. And now it's your turn. Super cool. Go and download the map, the guide. We have all of the steps in here that follow the workflows that we've looked at so far. So planning, contracting, tracking, and then handing over data and learning from it as well. These are following all of your ISO 19650 steps. We named it this camp guide because spreadsheet avoidance manual didn't fit on the slide.
Didn't sound as fun either.
What's great about this is trusted by over 100,000 teams around the world. Yeah, it's great when you start hearing auditors say the word dreamy. That's pretty cool. You're onto something quite good. And we love hearing your feedback. Some of the things here that people say about what we're doing. Best ever tool, feels like Disneyland when I'm using it, that sort of thing. People say wild things when they finally escape spreadsheet jail. If you haven't already, it is free to join. Get your free account. Yeah, and we're not secretly selling your BIM data to aliens. It's all, even if you're on a free account, it's all yours. It's all secure. Nobody has access to it. Just go to planoly.com and hit the big shiny join free button, and you'll find it's faster than trying to find your BIM execution plan on a shared drive. Yep, do it. Get onboarded. Find out whether it's for you or not. Tell us what you don't like, and we are here to listen to that as well. That's how we basically are growing with the community and building a better product as well. If you're interested in some more self-paced learning, jump in. This is free as well. There are certificates and a really structured learning program that follows from basics, advanced, and expert, following standards, international standards for ISO 19650. We even have this digital troublemaker course, which is also free. They're all free. Jump in there. If you are a university, a trainer, or a consultant, we have a partner program that basically gives you a whole bunch of stuff, tools, and helps you grow and shares a bunch of people that are looking for your services as well. We help universities make it easier for professors to teach and make students more employable. We help consultants win more business. We make the training more fun. If you want to jump in, book a meeting with us to get started. And who are those cartoon people? Well, we sort of joke around, but we're real people. We're super friendly. Please connect with us. They are our QR codes to follow us on LinkedIn, where we share a bunch of stuff. And you can also join this nerdy LinkedIn group for information managers. Scan the QR code and jump into that group. It's where we share a bunch of updates as well. All right, what's next? We are going all in. So we've had the orientation and we've gone through now these 4 sessions: planning, contracting, tracking, and handover. As we go into the last, we will be looking at the full workflow. So this is really going to be a full-on drink from the fire hose, because we're going to cover basically everything. What was your favorite idea, part of the workflow or feature? Something you'll take back to your team? How has something changed in your mind about information management since we've started? We really appreciate you being part of this journey. And we have this phrase of trust is a system, not a spreadsheet. And next will show you exactly how it can be built from soup to nuts. So join us in the final session of BIM Camp. It will be the most important one yet. We'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good week.
Bye.